This is a video about bodybuilding, but more in particular, this is a small link in a massive chain of videos. Our aim is to find the best version of Kai Greene. Today's comparison will feature the 2010 Grand Prix Australia Kai Greene versus the 2011 Mr. Olympia version. You may take note that this is not a mandatory pose. I've selected 3 specialty Kai Greene poses, and I understand they're not mandatory, so if one of these versions wins hands down on all 3, I'll give him 1 point. So it's a little bit exciting, and this pose here is a blowout for the Grand Prix Australia version, in my opinion. Much larger in the Mr. Olympia, I will admit. Look at the size of those legs. But legs are on the side of the Grand Prix Australia, in my opinion, because of that feathering. I love when he snaps his legs like that. Very impressive. The conditioning. If all of these poses reflect this pose, then the Grand Prix Australia has this one. This is a nice little tilting back shot. Very nice indeed. If you really look at the lower lats, it's incredible the amount of meat that he has packed on in the Mr. Olympia version. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not giving this one to the Olympia version. It's a very close call, that thin skin in the Grand Prix Australia version. Look at that. The back almost does look more impressive, but like I said, when you really look, that lower lat meat almost takes the victory for the Mr. Olympia version, but I don't know. Leaning slightly toward the Australia. This is a very interesting comparison. This one really shows that lower lat thickness, and it is much more thick and developed than the Australia version, but I wouldn't say it's more impressive. Not at all. That detail, that conditioning, it's raw. And look at those glutes. Way better, much more conditioned. Well, I think considering that I was on the favor of the Grand Prix Australia version in all 3 of those specialty poses, it is 1-0 heading into this match for the Australia version. Here in the front double bicep pose, it is 2-0 after this one. That conditioning is much too sharp on the Australia. The Mr. Olympia version abs are pretty much washed out when you compare it to that razor sharpness. But I will say, structurally, the Olympia one has this hands down, and I can understand how those mass freaks out there would say this is no contest. Look at the legs, much bigger and better. But I just find that aesthetics much better in the Australia version. Those abs, to me, the waistline is almost everything. A lot of people argue and say Phil Heath beat Roden at last year's Olympia. All the muscle groups were winning except the abs. But you have to understand, to a lot of us, including myself, to a lot of people, the abs are the frame around that picture, and it is very important. It holds everything together. So the score sheet now reads 2-0 for the Australia version. In this back shot, I also could understand how a lot of you would say this one is hands down the Mr. Olympia version. After all, look at those biceps, those arms, much bigger and better. But I have to be a stick in the mud in this one. That conditioning is much sharper. Look at the glutes. And the lower back actually looks very crisp here. Very nice indeed. Nice little V-taper as well. It is close, though, I must say, with those arms and the massive legs and that lower lat thickness. This one's almost a toss-up. I don't really feel comfortable giving any version a point in this one. 2 very impressive rear double bis. Very impressive indeed. Here in the front lat spread, and this is, without a doubt, a Mr. Olympia victory. Look at the legs, much bigger and probably just as conditioned as well here in this shot. Now, he is crouching down quite substantially, and it makes his lats much better. They're much more filled out. And it also made him appear to be a lot shorter. He's standing up too straight there in the Australia version. Doesn't really show those lats. Conditioning is still, the upper body is still in the favor of the Australia version. But nothing doing. This is a nice little battle after all. I would definitely give the Australia version this shot in the rear lat spread. Much more massive, I will say, for the Mr. Olympia, but I mentioned in a previous Best of Kai Greene video, he hit his shot two different ways. He'd throw his delts way up high, and it made his traps disappear, and that's what you see in the Olympia version, and that's what he stuck with for the rest of his career. And I never understood that, because I really appreciate the way he used to hit it. He'd hold his delts down, and it really exposed those traps. Look at that. Less of a field there, it appears. It's massive, that big field, I will say, but there's no detail for the Olympia. So, I can understand again, this is a very controversial matchup. This is mass versus conditioning. So I'm going to definitely have some backlash, and a lot of people will say this is a blowout for one or the other, and it is, depending on what you prefer. The Olympia version fetches a point here, no problem at all, here in the side chest pose, which makes the score 3-2 for the Australia version. But man, wow, he is crushing him, in my opinion. Just too big. Yes, the conditioning is a little bit better, but nothing doing. Look at the size of those triceps and the delts and that hanging hamstring, that separation between the hamstring and the quad, perhaps a little bit better, even though the conditioning in the glutes and things of that nature, that thin skin, very favorable in the Australia version. But like I said, nothing doing. Even the stomach this time. And yes, I left that to the end. I look at the detail of all the other muscles and then go to the gut, as that guy made that comment, and I apologize to that fellow. You're not a goof. You're not a goof. So I take that back. So, this is a nice little battle, like I said. It is actually very, very close in the ab and thigh shot. I figured it would be a blowout for the Australia due to that conditioning, but when I look at the abs, they're almost better in the Olympia version. Smaller waistline, I will say, for the Australia, but those massive lats more than makes up for that. This is a close one. I think that thin skin is just almost too much for the Olympia version. Look at the quads in both of these Kai Greenes. Very impressive. This is a tough one. If I gave this one to the Olympia, it would tie things up, but I can't do it. I have to go with my heart, and I really don't feel comfortable, once again, handing a point out in this one. Inconclusive in the ab and thigh, I will admit. This is less than fair for the Olympia version. That lighting just makes Kai look so frigging good. Pardon my language there. I didn't mean to get my swear words out of hand there. But like I was saying, that lighting makes him look like a comic book monster. And speaking of which, Kai Greene does have a comic book. Guess what? So does Mark's Max Muscle. I do a comic book too, and I have long hair as well. But of course I don't have the big muscles that Kai Greene does have. But I don't know. Like I said, that lighting is just too much. Makes him look too good. Hard to make an educated decision on this one. So let's switch over to the crab pose. And this one is really perfect to finish off with. This one resembles this entire match. Much bigger, much more massive. Look at those delts. Look at the legs in the 2011 Mr. Olympia version of Kai Greene. But in the 2010 Grand Prix Australia version, from the delts to the legs to the chest, even the abs in this shot, much thinner skin and much better conditioning. And I think the cherry on this top of this Kai Greene cake is that Franco Columbu split in that chest. Wow. Very impressive. Gets the edge in my opinion, but I do expect some backlash for sure, because this one, depending on what your flavor is and what you prefer, whether it be conditioning or a little bit of mass with some conditioning. Could have went either way, but only one may advance, and that is the 2010 Grand Prix Australia.
Advance.
And there we have it. One of the two semi-final matches is all set. The 2009 Mr. Olympia versus the 2010 Grand Prix Australia. Should be a fantastic comparison. Clash of the Titans, really. But we have to make that second semi-final matchup. And of course, I show both of them at the exact same time. The next matchup in the way of this tournament features a couple of Shirus, the 2011 versus the 2012 Shiru Classics. A lot of buzz around those two versions in my opinion, but never underestimate that 2014 Mr. Olympia, or especially that 2016 Arnold Classic. Very good, Kai, very good indeed. I am excited about this one. This one was my favorite one to do, and it's not even done yet. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. I know I got into a little bit of a tiff with that guy. And like I said earlier, I apologize. You're not a goof. I'm a little bit hot-headed sometimes, and I take things the wrong way, and I'm learning right there with you guys. I hope that I become a better YouTuber. I plan on doing this for the rest of my life, until I'm an old geezer. If I'm lucky, I make it to an old age. Once again, I must thank each and every one of you for clicking that subscribe button. You reaching my number even closer to that 1,000 subscriber level. And remember, all of the Gladiator finals will be shown once I hit that number and I am monetized finally. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and click that button, and I will thank you from the bottom of my heart. So, plenty to look forward to. Hope you enjoyed this one, and have a fantastic day.